And thank you for joining us today. My name is Faye Gill. I'm the Director of Membership Services at the Caribbean Tourism Organization, which represents 24 countries across the region. Today's workshop is one of the results of an ongoing partnership between the Caribbean Tourism Organization, CTO, and the George Washington International Institute of Tourism Studies, which is expertly led by my colleague, the Executive Director, Selani Mathis. She's going to be speaking in a few minutes. All the information presented today is detailed in a digital tourism toolkit, which was researched and prepared by the student consultants from George Washington University. The toolkit is freely available for download on the CTO website, which is onecaribbean.org. But for ease of access, we have posted the link to the toolkit in the chat window, so you can download the link while the session is going, the toolkit while the session is going on, so you can see what we're referring to. The toolkit, like today's workshop, is designed to provide tangible guidance to SMEs in the tourism sector on how to utilize digital marketing tools and strategies to better position their businesses during the sector's recovery and beyond. What we will cover today will be new to some, and it will be a timely refresher to others. But we do believe you will find this session useful, and we'll be happy for your feedback on what was shared in the session and how the toolkit potentially can be used to assist you in your business. So now I'd like to hand over to Selene Mathis to get today's proceedings officially started.
Thank you so much, Faye, and good morning, everyone. It's so lovely to have so many of you join us this morning. I think it's a testament to the importance of digital capacity and our understanding that we've been sort of pushed into this area maybe much faster than most small and medium-sized tourism enterprises might have felt ready to as a result of COVID-19. So as Faye mentioned, I head up the International Institute of Tourism Studies at the George Washington University. I'm proud to say that I'm a native of Belize, so feeling much comfortable within this beautiful crowd of SMEs from the Caribbean. I am joined today by Monica Schmidt. So Monica, maybe you can say hi. And you see Monica here as well. Lovely photo of her on the slide. Monica is a GW graduate tourism student alumna, and Beth Wright, who is a current graduate student. And they, along with a group of graduate students from tourism and also the MBA program at George Washington University, spent time developing this toolkit as part of a real life consulting project in which they worked for Belize and Grenada. So both Beth and Monica have established careers in development, hospitality, and tourism, and you'll be hearing a bit more from them when they open up their segments. They'll be introducing themselves. We've been delighted to serve as a partner to CTO on this toolkit. We recognized very early on as the pandemic raged that that there was an important need to ensure that our small and medium-sized tourism enterprises made it through and well. And so this journey, which began last year, has culminated today with the launch of this toolkit, which really is designed to help entrepreneurs like yourselves, to take practical steps to ensure that you are keeping top of mind, and that as tourism continues to open up, especially now with the vaccines, that you're well poised to take advantage of the new approaches that exist, and that you're putting in place all the important steps that are needed to bring back those visitors to your property or to your establishment, wherever you may be in the Caribbean. So the students conducted broad research last summer. They looked at best practices throughout the world to identify which practices needed to be featured in this toolkit, and to look at like who was doing what in the world that made a lot of sense and that was replicable by small and medium-sized enterprises to increase digital capacity. So they consulted with local accommodation providers, tour operators, and also other service providers in Belize and Grenada to help give shape to the toolkit. And so we were delighted to have the Belize Ministry of Tourism and Diaspora Relations and the Grenada Tourism Authority really provide the avenue for our students to develop the toolkit. So this toolkit that we're very proud to roll out today is hopefully going to be something that you can use right away. And this session is designed to really walk you through specific practices that we feel you can already put into place right away. And we'll be covering them in order of importance. So the practice that's covered first is the one that we think you should be thinking about and working to understand and apply in your business. So the agenda is going to be very simple. We'll roll out the digital toolkit and we'll be looking at 5 sort of key areas. One is online business listings and how to do that for your enterprise. So we'll be looking at social media and the content and messaging that's ideal during this time of recovery. So giving you some tips on what you should be thinking about and what you should be using and how you communicate. Also, some good practices associated to your websites, if you do have one. And then we'll wrap up with a more general section and some tips on digital technologies as well, things that we think that you should be aware of and keep present as you operate your small business. Please be thinking about your questions and you can even already start putting them into the chat box or hold on. And at the end, we'll have a question and answer segment. And if we're not able to get to your question, please make sure that you put it in the chat box so that we can get back to you to make sure via email to make sure that you have the response that you need. So without further ado, I'd like to now turn it over to Monica Schmidt. Monica, the floor is all yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much to Lenny and Faye for the warm introduction this morning. My name is Monica Schmidt, and I am a recent graduate of the Master of Tourism program at GW. The topic of digital strategy is very near and dear to me, as I also work full-time as a hotel marketing strategist here in DC. So with that being said, I'm going to kick off this morning's presentation by opening with a little bit of a poll. So if you don't mind indulging us in answering this poll, we're curious to hear about your organization and how much time you're spending on digital strategy currently compared with how much you spent prior to the pandemic. So are you spending significantly more time, perhaps the same amount of time, or less time on digital strategy? Right, we have some answers rolling in, and so far, significantly more is by far and away the #1 response, with nearly 50% of folks responding that they are spending significantly more time on their digital strategies post-pandemic. Give it a couple more seconds here. All right. So as we wrap up this first poll question, it looks like nearly 70% of folks on this workshop call are spending more time than they were prior to the pandemic on digital strategy. So it confirms that what we're talking about this morning is quite timely and relevant. All right. And then moving on to poll question #2. Which areas of digital strategy are you focusing most on currently? So is that social media? Is that your website? Are you updating online business listings? Are you getting back into advertising? We're curious to hear what you're spending that time focusing on digital strategy doing? All right, so far we have about 80% of folks spending the lion's share of their time focusing on social media, which, is a very important topic that will be covered in this morning's presentation. Social media usage has been skyrocketing through the pandemic, and definitely using social media to plan travel has increased as well. So we'll definitely continue to touch on this as we go through the presentation this morning. It looks like about a third of folks are spending time on their website, and then online business listings comes in third. All right. So moving on, the reason that we are spending so much time this morning talking about digital strategies is because of the renewed importance from the pandemic. So this is consistent across all industries, not just the travel industry, this accelerated digital transformation that has taken place. When you think about the medical industry, education, even grocery shopping, transformation on the digital front that was thought to take maybe 5 to 10 years to fully take place happened in a matter of weeks once the pandemic hit. So this has truly become a very, very accelerated area of development. And along with that, customer behaviors and their preferred styles of interacting with businesses have changed. As customers have become increasingly digital savvy during the pandemic, their comfort level with interacting online has increased, and they've now come to expect these digital interactions to take place in a timely manner. So really, in order to succeed and really thrive in this increasingly digital environment, businesses need to ensure that their digital channels meet customers' expectations. So that's something we'll be focusing on as we go through the presentation. For tourism specifically, tourism leaders have found since the beginning of the pandemic, and even prior to the pandemic, that digital transformation was taking place. But now these new technologies are playing an even larger role moving forward than what experts thought even a few years ago. So almost everyone here answered that they've been spending more time on digital strategy after the pandemic hit, and you're in good company. Skift recently surveyed more than 1,000 travel industry leaders, and 80% said they considered digital strategies much more or somewhat more important. So it's good to see that we have a consensus in the industry that digital is where things are heading. So we'll continue to touch on exactly how to craft digital strategies today. And again, this was considered, just helpful or perhaps optional before the pandemic, but now is truly considered required and an expectation of doing business post-pandemic. All right, so what exactly are traveler expectations on the digital front now that we are in a post-COVID world? Even prior to COVID, customers spent a lot of time online researching travel. On average, consumers spent about 50 days visiting over 30 different websites to book travel prior to the pandemic. And that has only increased with the amount of time that people have spent online during the pandemic. So what people are looking for on the digital front when they're planning their trip is, number one, accurate and up-to-date information that is online and compelling images to go with it. So making sure that across the board, across every digital channel, information is up to date at all times. That includes your safety information, your hours, to about your business. It all needs to be at people's fingertips digitally. And this digital presence is, really intended to build credibility and trust, which has become more important through the pandemic. Folks really want to feel confident in their decisions as they're traveling, and they look to websites and online business listings to do that. And then finally, prior to traveling and making a trip decision, customers are really looking for a seamless and fully digital booking process. So one of the things that our student team noticed as we were doing a digital audit in Belize and Grenada is that many of the booking processes on websites, be it hotels or attractions, we're actually still relying on email to make bookings. Now in a post-pandemic world, that booking process, the expectation is really that it takes place immediately online. So we'll touch on that a little bit in the presentation as well. And then during the travel experience, things have changed as well. Consumers are looking for fewer touch points throughout their experience. So that could be contact-free check-in or online ordering during their trip. They're also looking for perhaps a digital way to communicate during their trip, whether that be with their hotel or their tour coordinator. They want to be able to either send a Facebook message or send a quick chat and get answers immediately as they're traveling. And then finally, consumers are looking for mobile payment options while they're traveling. This was something that was slower to be adopted during travel prior to the pandemic, but is now becoming an expectation. And most folks now have their e-wallet handy as they travel, and they're ready to pay in a contact-free way. Right. So with that being said, for all of those reasons, we have created this digital toolkit. We have linked in the chat box the toolkit on the CTO website. And we want to reiterate that this toolkit is designed specifically for Caribbean destinations with input from destinations in the Caribbean, such as Belize and Grenada. We really also want to stress that this information is highly practical, and in almost all cases, little to no cost is involved. So we really wanted to recommend things that were truly pragmatic and could be put in place right away to have a large impact on digital strategy for small or medium-sized businesses. And we have 5 topics covered in this digital toolkit, as Selene mentioned. We will go through a little bit of each of these today. This presentation will by no means be a comprehensive look of all that's included in the digital toolkit. We encourage you to download it to learn more. However, we'll give little snippets of information for each of these that really give you some of the most important information that we collected during the toolkit. So we'll cover online business listings, and specifically Google My Business. We'll also cover some TripAdvisor and online travel agency information of how to make sure your profile stands out. We'll cover social media strategies, which 80% of folks responded as being their top priority right now, so we'll be sure to really hit that one home. We'll cover content and messaging, really making sure that we know how to strike the right tone and put uplifting content out there for consumers. We'll cover some website best practices. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a discussion about digital technologies. There's a lot of discussion about digital technology right now, and we'll kind of demystify that and go through which technologies are here to stay and which ones are less of a focus as we move through the pandemic. All right, so with that being said, I will move forward to our first topic, which is online business listings. And as Selene mentioned, we put this first because this is truly one of the most important ways to improve a digital strategy measurably in a quick amount of time. So online business listings are, perhaps the most time a consumer will spend with your company online prior to their travel experience. 40% of travel searches on Google do not result in a trip to your business's website. The consumer will stay within either the Google environment or they'll stay on the online travel agency and get all the information they need there. And you can see from the graphic that your website and your social is just really the tip of the iceberg, and the majority of touch points throughout this long, sometimes 2 to 3 month travel planning process will be interacting with your online business listings. So for this reason, we consider this probably the most important part of the digital toolkit. Right. So with the pandemic, we've seen and experts have reported that travelers are really viewing online business listings with an increased amount of scrutiny. So before, having an incomplete listing or perhaps not having the most up-to-date information on a listing wasn't the end of the world. Many companies, had, partial listings available, but now post-COVID, that all adds to your business's credibility and it adds to building trust during the travel planning process. So it is super critical that all online travel agency listings and all business listings have up-to-date COVID-19 health and safety protocols, that they have accurate information that gives a strong sense of credibility. And we have found that this sense of credibility leads to higher conversion. And also we want to focus specifically on Google My Business, and updating this listing in particular will help immensely with your search engine results as well. So there are residual effects for making sure your business is in front of consumers, as opposed to other businesses that have incomplete listings. Your business will be prioritized in search results because the information is complete and accurate. So moving to specifically Google My Business listings and the knowledge panel. We know that 70% of travel searches start on Google, and this Google Knowledge Panel, which pops up on the right-hand side of your screen during Google searches, is perhaps the most important part of the whole process. So it is very important that the Google business listing is, first of all, claimed. So you need to take ownership of the business listing if you have not already. And then beyond that, it's very important to have compelling photos and visuals in the business listing. Listings with photos, and professional photos at that, are twice as likely to generate the interest of travelers and result in a booking. And then we also want to note that there have been a lot of changes with business hours and the availability of services throughout the pandemic. So it's super important to make a reminder each week to update your business listing with accurate information. So for me, as a hotel digital marketer, I have a Friday appointment on my calendar each week to update Google My Business listings across our whole hotel. So I'm updating the restaurant hours, I'm updating the amenities we offer on a weekly basis, and making sure that everything is totally up to date, because I know that that will result in greater trust and a greater number of bookings. And then beyond Google, we also think it's very important to update your online travel agency listings. And this is particularly for accommodations, whether that be hotels or shared properties. Updating business listings on Expedia, on Booking.com, on Airbnb is another way to ensure that your business has the strongest credibility possible for your digital presence. So all of these online travel agencies have added new ways to communicate health and safety updates to consumers. And these change quite frequently. So again, setting a weekly reminder to go through and update all of the new health and safety questionnaire questions is a great way to really make sure that you're staying on top of all of the new information that's been added to these sites. Another important update to make for online business listings is to make sure it's clear that your policies are flexible. So removing any advanced prepayments that were perhaps noted before, and making sure consumers know that, if possible, this booking is flexible, and that'll just give people that much more confidence in their booking. We also want to stress that travelers are booking further out than ever before their vacations. So really making sure your inventory is updated even through 2023 could result in more bookings. So really giving your business that opportunity to be booked into the far future. Again, I set a monthly reminder for this one to update my inventory well out into 2023. And then finally, online travel agencies have made more information and more data available than ever to help businesses really craft their strategy. So for example, Expedia and TripAdvisor on a weekly basis publish new free statistics about what consumers are looking for. So we encourage you to really visit these sites often to make sure you're taking advantage of that information that's available for free. And it's sometimes very rich data, especially in the case of Expedia, about who's booking and when and why. So again, really encourage you to check that out frequently. All right. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague Beth to talk a little bit about social media.
Thanks so much, Monica, and thank you, Selene and Faye, for the great introduction earlier today. Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to meet with you today and to discuss the Digital Toolkit, which we created over the last year or so since the pandemic hit. My name is Beth Wright. I am currently a graduate student at George Washington University, but I'll be graduating in just about, I don't know, 2 weeks now, 3 weeks now, which is really exciting. Additionally, I am a travel and tourism consultant, specifically in sustainability, and I have the honor of being able to work in the Caribbean for numerous years. I've been working in Belize since about 2012 and in Trinidad and Tobago since 2014. I've had the pleasure of visiting some other islands as well, but haven't had the pleasure of diving into too many deep projects as yet. But it was a real joy for us to be able to put this together to specifically, oh, thank you, Inez, I appreciate that. To be able to put this together for tourism businesses within the Caribbean. We know that tourism is so critical for the area. And a lot of these things that we're talking about today were already a priority and an area that needed capacity building before we actually made the toolkit itself. And now that we're in the COVID space, it's absolutely essential. So you all, I think from the poll, we saw a lot of you have been engaging in social media. So I will kick off this section knowing that you have been at this and practicing it probably for the last 6 or so months. We're going to give you 3 tips here today. It's not exhaustive. The toolkit has far more in-depth information regarding social media, but this first one is really to know who your new consumer is. So what this means is you potentially have the same target market as before, but it's possible that you don't. Let's say you previously mostly had customers coming through because of cruise tourism. And cruise tourism isn't happening right now, but you are having people visit, let's say from Europe, and it's a new market, it's a new group of people, and you're not so sure how to reach out to them quite yet. So one of the first things that you can do is really make sure that your current and future target market is someone you know, and you'll know exactly how to market towards them, to have them come to your business and they can see what you're doing and be excited in what you're all about. So how to figure out who your new consumer is. We have a few tips here on the side and more within the toolkit itself. The first one really being consult your destination organization. So any of the tourism boards or tourism and travel associations or restaurant associations, these groups really tend to put together information or are looking at the trends across the board as to the source markets to see who is still wanting to come to your destination and when they want to come and what they're expecting and all that consumer sentiment information. So first step, check in with your DMO, see what kind of information they have. Another thing that you can do on your own is actually review the free Google Travel Insights data. So there is a lot of information online that you can look up for free to see who exactly your target market is and information about how soon would they potentially be traveling to see you. When they come, let's say to Jamaica, what would they want to be doing? If they wanted to, they're usually into adventure travel and they're looking at places in the Bahamas, what are they expecting? So you can shape your social media and other strategies accordingly. And the third option we have here is to, of course, talk to an online travel agency partner. So travel agency partners, they have their pulse, their thumb on the pulse of the industry during this entire time. I think the amount of times people have been surveyed to see where they want to travel, how they want to travel, it's quite exhaustive. So there's lots of information out there for you to figure out who your new consumer might be, or if it's still the same group. So we'll go to the second tip here. The second main tip we really wanted to make sure of, that I'm sure you're starting to perhaps have a bit of fatigue around with your social media strategies, is that consistency is really key. So your brand and your messaging, once we get to content messaging in a moment, you'll see it's really good for someone to be able to see your logo or your name and immediately know what to expect as far as what you can offer. So you can see our wonderful example here from the 501 Hub. This is a lovely restaurant in Belize City in Belize, and it's also a place for community to really gather. and commune together. And so you can see here both their Instagram on the left and their Facebook on the right. And so there's consistency across the board with the information that you're using. And this really strengthens the message that you want to get across to your potential consumers. And that leads us to tip number 3. Great. Which is really, as we mentioned, in this time when, let's say, your target market, your consumer is shifting, it's probably best to try to focus mostly on free and organic social media first prior to paid social media. It's always nice to have a bit of a mix, but if you have a really limited budget, which we know tourism businesses at the moment in the region do, it's really key to use every dollar very strategically. And so there are ways to leverage the free side of social media well in advance of having to use paid social media as well. And then as things start to stable off a little bit more, travel becomes more frequent, things somewhat turn back to normal, you can start integrating more paid social media. But to kind of take the edge off of any concerns you might have on your budget, we have a few ideas here to help around focusing on that free and organic social media. And so the first thing really to keep in mind is that it's important to keep it all really manageable. I think what's interesting is people can tell if you're all over the place with your social media. If they see one kind of post over in Twitter, another type over on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and Snapchat, and you can really get ahead of yourself here. So what we're recommending is to keep a really manageable strategy. This can help you both in planning so that you're not spending exhaustive amounts of hours in front of the computer, but you're also able to deliver a really consistent message to your potential customers in the future. So some of the things we would recommend are just engaging on 1 to 2 platforms at a time. Facebook and Instagram is a great way to start. They both target different types of customers and they're both pretty easily manageable. Everybody knows Facebook. Increasingly, folks are comfortable with Instagram, and that's a good place to start if you haven't done so before. The other, similarly to what Monica was saying about scheduling ahead of time for updating things for online business posting, is that you can set out a schedule of themes for your posts in advance. So let's say there are certain seasons coming up. I remember in Belize, it was always a lovely mango season or a lobster season. And so these are lovely things you already know of in advance, and you can set your content ahead of time and know what you're gonna post. Obviously things happen and all sorts of things will change at the drop of a hat, but it's nice to have broad strokes ideas about what you might wanna post about, because then you can go ahead and have your pictures ready. You can come up with a fun hashtag. You can see other partners that can join in on it. It can give you a bit of time to coordinate with other people in your destination. So just giving yourself a little bit of a schedule can really help in that regard. And then we're just going to give you here a couple little tips more specifically on some of these platforms. And so for Facebook and Twitter, one thing that can be very effective is pinning. There's an option to pin important posts so that they just land right at the top of the feed. I think this one's probably pretty well known. I think this crowd's largely on Facebook quite a lot. But what's nice is what do you want your potential consumer to see right away? And if you've done a really nice post that's for, let's say, a socially distanced event that you have happening at the beach in a month, you want to keep that right at the top of the feed up until that event occurs so that people are really seeing what's going on and they don't have to scroll continuously to see what's happening next. Equally on Instagram, there's a couple of things you can do to really interconnect what you're doing on social media back to your website platform. And so on Instagram, be sure to add your website to the bio section of Instagram. So you can go in, there's a little part that actually allows you to put in a website. So it's really, really useful. They've already thought of this. So making sure you put your business's website right into the bio so that if someone comes across your Instagram feed, you have some lovely photos of a yacht activity, they can immediately click to your website and there they are looking at the options to book as well. Additionally, one thing we would recommend is utilizing the highlights that you can make from stories. And so you'll see previously in the post about 501 Hub, they actually have a little story highlight around an expo that they're going to be doing soon with a couple of different businesses. So it's an easy way for people to immediately see what you're doing, and it's top of mind, it's right there, and it's a nice highlight. And so you can actually create a story highlight around what you or your destination's doing to handle COVID-19, really building that confidence from potential consumers, or you can be highlighting future activities as well. So those are a few of the top tips that we've got for social media. All right, so I touched on a little bit of this already, but the third thing that we feel is really quite critical is content and messaging. So what are the differences between these two? We're going right down to the basics and setting context for these. So for content, this is really any written or visual piece that a business features either on, you can put on your website, on online business listings, or across your social media channels. What's important here is to really have compelling content that really helps attract and maintain your audience. So I think this is really where you can get very creative, have a lot of fun, make sure your voice is heard. Content can be the fun kind of creative side of the whole thing. And then messaging, the difference here is that messaging is really about how businesses talk about themselves and the value that they provide. And so what's good about this is when a business is defining their message strategy, it's sort of like creating a blueprint for how a business will communicate with consumers. So you're already allowing people to see how you want to communicate with them in the future, what they can expect. And a lot of times that can drive if someone starts to follow you. If they see, oh, this one person always has these really cool tropical island like photos, and they show me how they like to cook the meals that their mom taught them and their grandma made them. I want to follow this account. I'm excited about this type of messaging and content. And so then they'll start following, and you'll be top of mind when they want to book for a vacation later on. All right, so within the digital toolkit, we mentioned that there are top 3 messaging themes that you should consider. Today, we're only gonna dive a little bit deeper into community, but the other 2 are utility. So really making sure your business and your destination are a consistent and valid source of information for travel. Every destination in the world is going to be online, or already is, posting about why they need to be where someone needs to travel next. And so you should try your best to be a consistent voice. Sorry, thank you. Try to be a consistent voice for both yourself and the destination, so people really have confidence in where they're coming to visit. The second one is well-being. This one's very intuitive as well, around just COVID-19 safety and security information. Increasingly, folks want to know, how is this destination or this business really managing COVID-19? How are they keeping the customers safe, so the visitor, but also how are they keeping themselves safe and their staff and their community? That's actually really key. And so then the third one that we'll dive a little more deeply into now is community. So Monica, if you want to move forward. Thank you. So the area of community, which is really exciting, I think, is that this is an opportunity for people to really know who you are. I think the most beautiful part about traveling to the Caribbean is beyond the sun, sand, and sea factor. That's everywhere, right? The most wonderful part is the feeling of community and getting to know people on an intimate level that are from a completely different place and a new culture. And other people are showing that they absolutely agree. So you'll see some statistics here from a report from the American Express Global Travel and Trends, and this just came out this past March, saying that 72% of travelers agree that they're passionate about traveling to destinations to help boost tourism revenue and the local economy. Additionally, 77% of travelers also agree they want to be more conscious about supporting small local businesses while traveling. And so this is great news for content and messaging and your businesses. The more you highlight you're a locally owned, community supporting business within a tight community that embraces culture and values of the place, the more people are going to want to visit and support you. It's something that people are really craving in this time. It's a challenge to have community right now. especially getting to feel it in person. And so the opportunity to get to travel is a huge treat, but people are really feeling the need to connect more than ever. And so you can actually share how you're doing so to really promote people to come and visit with you. And so some of the examples we have here, we've been highlighting the 501 Hub. They're a favorite business of ours. And so we're really happy to show this other example, a couple of these. So they created a gratitude campaign. This is a place where people can really come together and support one another. And so online, by sharing ways that they're proud and happy and feel safe within their Belize community, that's inspiring travelers to want to come and be a part of that. Additionally, there's a new expo that they're going to be doing soon called the Small Business Expo. And this is really allowing for other visitors to be able to know that this is a group of people that are coming together. It's a complete destination, and that they can feel like they're really part of something special. And so simply by highlighting the unique factors that you're local, perhaps you're female owned, let's say you're making products that are directly from local agriculture, you cook local foods, things like this are very attractive and interesting because they're unique and different and special for the potential visitor. All right, and so just a couple of the highlights that we're actually seeing from studies is really, you know, some of these I think everyone's probably already doing very well and knows that they're common. So highlighting the coast, you know, people are wanting to do water sports more than ever. I think, Monica, you were just telling me that there was a Google Travel and Trends report that was saying one of the top trends was water sports. And so if you do water sports or you're near the water, you can absolutely highlight that. People are really craving it. We're just coming out of the winter months here in the United States. We're desperate for some warm weather and nice tropical spaces. And so you can absolutely show that, especially images that are showing kind of solo or partner activities that are socially distanced and safe. So people are probably going to be a bit more wary of doing large scale events where people are not wearing masks. That's not necessarily recommended to post right now. You probably have some great photos from the past of huge gatherings of folks on the beach and whatnot. But what is good to post are images that people can really visualize themselves being a part of. So a couple, you know, walking along a beautiful beach, or a couple of people bird watching and hiking and getting to see something new. These are safe activities and people can immediately put themselves at ease and in that idea. Also open air activities, as much as you can show kind of open air and breezes, people are always going to be thinking COVID for a while yet. But the most important thing is to continue to just be really uplifting. You know, it's been a tough year for everyone. I think it continues to be a very challenging year for many people all over. And so for all of us, even kind of in a domestic market or even for foreign visitors, we need to hold each other up and build each other up. And so maintaining an uplifting voice in that online space will be good in the short term for us in the meantime, but also for the future. People will be very excited to come and visit you later on. All right, and here's just a couple of examples that we've got here. So wanting to show, you know, it's important to promote some outdoor activities. So you can see one on the bottom right, encouraging guests to explore outdoor dining options whenever possible, and just showing images of what that looks like. I think that can be really great. It's also a way, you know, if you're doing anything around sustainability, that's a really key thing you can kind of promote as well. So if you're using things that are sustainable cutlery and plates, you know, show a photo of your delicious food outside. Someone enjoying it with that kind of imagery can go a long way. It's also good to keep your advertisements update with descriptions that emphasize outdoor activities. So one thing that is really key that we talked about with social media, but it's really critical across the board, is just the consistency of your messaging and the fluidity between all of your different platforms. So it's really best if your website has a particular vibe, and content that's there and information shared. And if someone did Google you and that Google panel shows up, they're seeing very similar information. Nothing's confusing. It's very much in line. They see your COVID policies. They see what kind of activities they can do. It all looks fresh. It all looks interesting. And that's really what's going to drive people to book with your business. And that leads us to part 4, which is really website best practices. We're not going to spend too much time here. There's a lot within the digital toolkit that really covers this area, but it is really critical to keep your website up to date. I think it's an easy one to kind of let go. It's sort of like, oh, the website, we updated it some time ago, everything's there, don't worry about it. But if you've changed your social media strategy, or if you've been updating your online business postings with Google or TripAdvisor, you need to make sure your website is saying very similar information, because that's eventually where they'll go to book if they're not going through a third-party vendor. So some of the things during COVID that we would say tourism businesses must communicate are the things you see here. It's really critical that you share that you have a COVID-19 prevention plan, including some FAQs. So how have you been handling COVID-19? How are you keeping yourself, your staff, and visitors safe? It's also quite critical to keep your cancellation and rebooking policy. People are wanting to book now more than ever, but they're also expecting to be able to cancel with a bit more ease than before. This is across airlines and hotels and tours. People want to be able to book and have something to look forward to, but they just as easily want to know what happens if I can't make it? What if I get COVID? What if the world shuts down again? So just telling them upfront what that looks like will do quite a lot to help. It's important to have clear contact information for travelers with questions or concerns. We'll share a little tip around this in a moment, but it's really helpful for folks to be able to know, how can I find this person and how can I learn what I need to learn before booking? Equally, a seamless and fully digital booking process. As Monica mentioned, we did learn that most people in the areas that we did this study in Belize and Grenada were still using emails to be able to book their reservations. And it doesn't mean that we're saying to remove kind of a personal touch when it comes to making reservations. Absolutely, they should be meeting you. They should know what that feels like. But for your own self and for them, it's nice to have a seamless process to actually book the trip, and it has all the information they need. And that way they can just look forward to it and remove any kind of errors along the way. And then, of course, the business the bonus that we have here at the bottom is really about how businesses are helping in the community. So highlighting any ways that you're a part of community, building that up, it can really help as far as building confidence for potential visitors. Great. And so the example that we have here is around a chat box. And so one of the things that's really helpful is to be able to continuously be able to communicate with potential visitors openly and easily. So because of temporary closures and limited hours, businesses have less opportunities to communicate with potential customers. You don't have someone necessarily sitting there ready to answer the phone, ready to answer the email right away. But it is also really critical. Oh, my apologies. So it is also really critical to keep the lines of communication open, and so that experts can recommend adding a live chat box. So you see an image of one here. It's really simple. It's a little widget that you add to your website. And what's really nice about this is that through the way that they have it, messages will come to you almost like Facebook Messenger messages. So you could be about town, getting your errands done, doing what you have to do, and you're seeing a message come up about an inquiry from someone who wants to potentially come visit. You can answer it then. You can save it for later and just easily know that you're continuously communicating with potential visitors, but you're not sitting in front of a desk the entire day, just poring over emails and feeling overwhelmed by the process. So what's really nice about this is that it's a faster alternative to having guests email reservation inquiries in, and it can also allow you a bit more flexibility to do what you need to do out and about, while also maintaining communication with your potential customers. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Monica to talk over our very last segment around digital technologies.
Thank you so much, Beth. All right, so for digital technologies, we have found that there has been a lot no shortage of information available about digital technologies that aid in the travel process. However, we want to really caution everyone that some of these are not here to stay, and some will perhaps fade in relevance after COVID. So it's really important to make informed decisions around which technologies to utilize and which technologies are the right long-term investment for your business. Because as we know that not all of these, such as temperature checks or tracking and tracing software, perhaps the voice assistants in rooms, which can be super glitchy, are not going to be as popular as the pandemic progresses. Some technologies that we think have the power to stick around include communication platforms. So that can be guest messaging platforms, such as the chat box that Beth just described, or even communication tools to communicate as a team amongst your staff. These communication platforms have become key as we all shifted to working remote. They've become key as guests really want a contact-free experience and perhaps don't want to stop by the front desk at a hotel and would prefer to message for a response. And they've become key now that more guests are becoming digitally savvy. Perhaps guests that weren't inclined to send a message before are now more comfortable with that technique, and that's now their preference post-COVID. So these communication platforms, we think, have the power to be an important digital strategy moving forward, even beyond the pandemic. We also have contactless payment options listed here, but we do want to acknowledge that as we are doing this project in Belize and Grenada, we understand that the mobile payment landscape in the Caribbean is still a bit challenging and perhaps expensive for businesses to participate in as well. So with this one, we really encourage businesses to stay informed and keep up to date on the options that are available within their destination for mobile payment. Or perhaps it's a peer-to-peer payment app that you utilize instead, such as PayPal or Venmo, to facilitate the digital payment process. But that will be a digital technology that will stick around in the future as more travelers have their e-wallet with them. And then finally, we do anticipate that QR code menus and online food ordering will continue to be a large part of the digital landscape for travel beyond the pandemic. So folks are very accustomed to a digital menu now, and even come to expect perhaps the ability to order from that digital menu. And QR codes being free or little to no cost, that is a great introduction point to a digital technology for your business. All right, and with that, we are wrapping up the Digital Toolkit content. Thank you all for your attention throughout. I will hand it over to Beth to ask a few questions now.
Okay, so we just gave you guys a lot of information. I'm sure some of it was familiar, maybe some of it was new. We'd love to hear what you're thinking though. So this first one is we'd like to know, in which areas of digital strategy does your business need a little bit more support moving forward? So where do you think you need to be focusing on? Is it in social media, perhaps with your website, those online business listings? We've got a few examples there around digital technologies and also advertising. We didn't touch on advertising a whole lot, but when we did talk about organic paid and paid media, that would be considered advertising. So let these come in. Oh gosh, everything's pretty neck to neck, so we got to focus on lots of things. Fantastic.
It's exciting to see that online business listings has increased as an area of focus a little bit from the start of the presentation. So I hope we really impressed upon everyone just how important those are and how much time travelers spend with those business listings.
Yeah. And the best part, I think you brought up, Monica, is that that's the quickest fix. A lot of these other things, creating content, creating messaging, that takes time and you have to be developing things. Whereas claiming your business online with Google and then just answering a few quick questions, it can take up to maybe 30 minutes and you're good to go. That's awesome. So it sounds like social media is still like the main point that we want to focus on. So, within that, we mentioned within the toolkit, there's a lot more around social media that you can check out. And perhaps we can look for other things to follow up with other best practices that can be helpful in that regard, but this is really helpful. Great. And then we have one last poll for everybody. All right, and so this one is, we'd love to hear from you. What are you most excited to implement with your digital strategy moving forward? And so we gave a couple of ideas of things we provided for today. So are you looking forward to updating your content and messaging? Are you thinking about cleaning up your online business listings, perhaps adding a chat box to your website? I imagine with all that social media needs, there's maybe perhaps developing a social media campaign that's around your community, or perhaps looking into some of those digital technologies to reduce touch points. Which ones are you most eager to try first? Awesome. So it seems like most are looking at content and messaging updates. Absolutely. I think this can be a great time to do that. Again, it can be quite a lot of fun too. One of the tools that I really love that's quite intuitive is Canva. C-A-N-V-A is one tool. It's absolutely free. I've been using it, oh gosh, number of years now, I think, at least for me, since about 2017. And it's something quite easy to use. So if I could give everyone a little tip about how to make your own content that looks really sophisticated and fancy, you can go that route. There's plenty of others out there as well, though. That's great. And it sounds like the second one was around developing social media strategy around community. That's excellent. Thank you. All right, so with that, we'd love to open things up. If folks have any additional questions, we'll kind of look over here at the chat, see what everyone's talking about. If you have questions about this presentation or about other information that might be in the digital toolkit, it's 11 o'clock now, so we have a little bit of time. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
I think we did receive one question about claiming an online business listing on Google. So I just wanted to clear that up real quick and explain how to do that. There's two things that might happen. You might find that there is already a place within Google Maps that the business already exists. In that case, you simply need to claim it. So in Google Maps, you can click the link called Claim This Business Listing. And then what will follow is a two-step verification process where you'll need to, more likely than not, provide the business's phone number. Someone from Google will call to verify that you are indeed the owner and you answer that phone. And then once that occurs, you will have claimed the business listing. The other important step in that is that you do need a Gmail account. So make sure that you are logged into your Gmail account when you're doing that claiming of the business listing. And then if the business does not exist, I would recommend going to Google Maps and creating it. You can literally drop the pin where you want it and really update and create from scratch the business listing. After this, I am going to drop in a few links directly from Google of how to create the new business listing from scratch. They have tons of free information about how to do this. So I just wanted to share those as well.
Awesome. And it looks like we did have one question about the new technologies, about why robots might not be used in room messaging consistently. So I wonder if, Monica, if you have any insights from your experience working in the hotels, kind of what technology you think is really going to be most useful now?
Yeah, I think with this, we are really focused on the near to midterm of what this would look like for small businesses. And would robots really be, accessible financially, or with the limited resources of small businesses in the near to midterm? And the answer is perhaps not. Most businesses aren't able to make that investment yet. So perhaps in the long term for sure, but for the time being and in the midterm, robots aren't playing a meaningful role. I would mention that in-room messaging, that second part, that is key. Messaging is definitely something that will stick around. So I want to make sure that was clear as well. Communication platforms are super important and will continue to be.
Awesome.
Thanks for that, Monica. There's one more question here from Courtney. There's several actually, but this one is regarding the mobile payments technology and the fact that there are limited options in the Caribbean outside of PayPal. And I know you guys did a bit of research on that. Do you want to maybe share highlights?
Yes, sure. So what we did learn is that it's actually currently not quite an easy fix. I think it's something that needs to be delved into a bit deeper. So folks who work within the finance industry, this is a real opportunity. We did see some businesses, I think one actually based out of Trinidad and Tobago, unsure how active the company is currently, that was basically creating a Venmo situation. We pay, perfect, yes. And so kind of a Venmo situation for that particular area that might be able to be used across the Caribbean region. But this is something really useful. This is also an area where perhaps using kind of a third party booking agent can help in some of that regard, because you're setting something up on the back end. And so people, even if they're standing right in front of you, but if they're able to book it through that third party use, so if it's through Airbnb experiences, let's say, or Airbnb itself or something like that, that can be a nice sort of workaround in the meantime. But this is an important area that does need further research and actually someone to address it. And I see here a couple folks also mentioned around virtual and augmented reality tourism. So what we focused on here was really around digital strategies to really enhance for when people return to in-person tourism. Virtual tourism is certainly happening. I myself actually supported someone from Trinidad and Tobago, the Alliance of Rural Communities, to host a virtual experience this past weekend around decolonizing cacao. So it was a fully interactive active experience. We shipped participants a little chocolate kit. They were able to try some interesting things and have a virtual experience with someone. So these are definitely happening. It requires a bit of training and know-how, particularly with platforms like Zoom, the one we're using for this meeting here. But there are certainly trainings and resources available for folks. And Airbnb Experiences is one platform amongst a few that actually can help in that regard. So I would recommend looking into that. I do think it's a great opportunity in the short term if you're interested in looking into it. I haven't necessarily, don't know if Monica or others have seen any literature or research on how much that'll stick around as in-person travel picks back up in the next year or so. I'm not sure if others have a thought on that.
There isn't, but it's always, especially for the Caribbean, you know, we need to diversify products. There's hurricane season, so while the pandemic might go away, there are other things that we're always having to worry about. And so for those of you that are offering experiences, it might be worthwhile to take a look at Airbnb Experiences, especially. They do offer a little bit of hand-holding at the outset. We've been working with a lot of communities through the Institute, of course, to help them through the basics. And if that's like an area that there's interest, please do drop it in the chat box so that we know it's something that we can look at with CTO to roll out in the near future if there's a lot of interest in virtual experiences and how to develop those.
Seeing got a couple other questions here. I see some folks are actually posting about potential paying options. I'm seeing payments.belizeing.com as well as the link for WePay. So those are some excellent resources to check out. Thanks so much for sharing those, everyone. Let's see here. I thought I saw a couple other questions.
Just another small note on the payments. It sounds like Compete Caribbean is also doing some work, and so great to hear that. And yeah, if there's any new information from Compete Caribbean, I guess we may have one or two individuals from Compete Caribbean on the line. If there's anyone here in the room, if you have any additional insights to share, please do, or any web links that may be useful to participants. We would certainly appreciate that. Oh, and there it is. So Courtney has put in the competecaribbean.org website address. So please visit that website.
There's also information on the community tourism program on the CTO website. So there is information available. Thank you very much for sharing that, Courtney. There's also a request from Sylvia Donnert, who's also from Compete Caribbean, for the contact information for the team. And that information will be shared after the presentation.
Wonderful. And I see one question here, it might be best for you, Monica, around, you had mentioned that travelers are booking much further out than ever before. Is that info specific to hotels only, or does that also include vacation rentals, or perhaps a combination of the both?
So that statistic was specific to flight bookings, but on the hotel side, anecdotally, we are seeing an extended booking window. It seems like it's divergent in a way. So people are either booking very last minute or very far out. That kind of middle booking window has kind of shifted further out. So people are either booking that last minute, gotta get away right now trip, or they're spending a lot of time and putting in, a lot of planning hours into these trips that are a year to 2 out. I don't have statistics specific to Airbnbs. However, I'm happy to dig a little bit and take a look at what I can find there and send that out to the group.
I think we've addressed all the questions. If we haven't asked your question, please perhaps copy and paste it. We might have missed it. I'm trying to scroll back, but if you have any others. Oh, here's one. Do you have any suggestions for networking hubs, websites or forums to align with travel reps or agents? That is a fantastic question. Yes, Travel Massive. That's perfect. So Travel Massive is a fantastic site to be able to connect with others. They actually feature a lot of folks within the travel and tourism industry, so professionals and consultants and otherwise, where people actually have profiles of themselves and how they can interact with one another. I think that's the main one that I know of as well. I'm wondering, Monica or others, do you have others, or are there ways perhaps through the CTO? Is there any information at a regional level for folks to connect and network in that way?
I find that Travel Massive is a wonderful resource, and they even host webinars as well. One other organization that I have enjoyed following is the Independent Lodging Conference. I think they offer a lot of networking opportunities, so I'll post the link there as well. In addition to 3 weekly webinars with different, it's all very focused on independent businesses, so very applicable for this group. So I'll drop that link in. Oh, Beth, you're on mute.
Saying thank you so much. I don't know if I see, oh, here's another question. So good morning from Compete Caribbean. The tools and comments are very useful. Thank you. During our tourism company assessments, we can confirm the major trends. We've also seen there's a lack of awareness about basic KPIs, such as RevPAR, ADR, occupancy rate. We think these are basic for regulating the effort of other tools. Any advice on that? So around measuring the use and how much people are visiting. I wonder, this is something we touched on a little bit with our other webinar. I don't know if, Monica, would you have any ideas here?
So maybe sorry.
No, I was just gonna,
I was just gonna say that one of the things we didn't sort of note is that there is a companion tool for destination organizations. So for all your tourism boards and ministries of tourism, there is, so this tool that we launched here for you today is especially for tourism businesses. But there's a companion tool that provides insights to you and to other tourism stakeholders that we're recommending for destination organizations. And actually that dashboard that provides information on like some of these kind of like basic metrics that were just mentioned to help you understand like what it is that the usage and also like what the pricing is and some of these things are that would help your business maybe make more informed decisions about how about how you'd like to maybe revise pricing, or also to understand how the destination is making progress toward full recovery. So you have a sense of like what occupancy rates are maybe in different parts of the country and so forth. And actually Belize has like a full they've used the dashboard, they've populated it, and most of the information in that dashboard can be obtained free of cost, like some key areas. And so there's a full companion tool with instructions and sources from where they can find information to populate that dashboard. So if you'd like to take a look at that, I think Monica has dropped the links there in the chat. And I think that's like a great point that you raise. And while it's great to make sure that at the hotel level, at each enterprise is aware of what these metrics are and for their own business and to use it to make decisions. It's also great to have consolidated information about this at the destination level, because it can also help inform decision at the individual business level. So hopefully that's useful. And Monica, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Well, for me, sorry, I just wanted to make the point that for the countries that are present here, we would have, as Selene just said, there is the companion tool. So several of your DMO representatives did participate in the workshop that we had last week to highlight how to use that tool and the benefits of it. So the information is in destination. So in addition to you being able to download it from the link that's been posted in the chat here for your own reference, know that your destination management professionals also have that information and potentially will be utilizing it.
Fantastic. So it looks like we're just about 1 minute past the hour. I wonder if Monica, you would like to show our last slide before Faye closes this out. We do want to share with you all, for those who don't know, there's a really exciting opportunity. So the George Washington International Institute of Tourism Studies, in collaboration with the Caribbean Tourism Organization, has an online professional certificate program in sustainable tourism destination management. It's a really interesting course. It's been re-updated for the modern time. So it integrates a lot within COVID-19 resiliency, as well as within these main core topics. And so as you can see, there's kind of two main session areas. You can take each course on its own, so it can be a la carte. There's an introduction to sustainable tourism, which is coming up soon here in June. Then there's one that focuses more specifically at the destination management level, as well as destination marketing, which might be of particular interest for this group, considering the topic we had here today. So that one will take a full week and you'll hear from other experts. That's what's really fantastic about these courses. It's prepared by tourism professionals and taught specifically for managing destinations with the future in mind. And so it's all on an online course featured live lecture kind of way. There's real world cases. It's quite flexible. I myself actually took this course a few years back. It's what got me really involved in tourism and into this eventual program. And so you can choose one or all of these courses. If you are part of the CTO, there is also a little discount code you'll see on the bottom left corner, CTO-50. So if you use that at checkout, you can actually get an additional $50 off. And then as well as signing up by May 3rd for an additional discount. So I think that's something really interesting to mention. And there is that information session coming up April 27th. So I wonder if Selene or Faye, if you have any other highlights for this dynamic program you'd like to share.
Just one sort of suggestion I would recommend, especially for these tourism businesses, for all of you that are interested in like virtual experiences as well. The product development, the 704, which is in October, is a really good one. It covers the entire sort of cycle of developing experiences, and it will touch on virtual experiences as well. So that's like a good one to start with, should in case you want to keep it like super focused on your day-to-day operations.
Well, thank you so much. And I think with that, if Faye, if you'd like to close us out, at least on my behalf, thank you all so much. This was really fantastic to get to meet with you all and listen to have, you know, your questions and have a conversation around that. I think we will put our contact info in the chat here so we can communicate further offline as well. So from at least myself, thank you very much.
All right, so I'll lose all the chat that we come back in without the chat.
Excuse me.
All right.
Sorry. Good morning again, everyone. Thank you so much to everybody that was here today and all the questions that were asked. The feedback that I'm seeing suggests that you did find it informative and that it has been useful. We would have placed in the chat a couple of times the link to download the actual toolkit. And we encourage all of you to do so, to go through the document, to see how you can actually implement it, to look at ways in which you can share it with your other stakeholders. Essentially, what we want to do is we want to be able to have all of our stakeholders within the sector ready and able to take advantage of the new tourism that we will be experiencing. All the data that we've seen suggests that there will be a summer 2021. And we would really like for you to be able to be in a position to take advantage of that and to benefit as best ways possible. So again, I want to really thank the team at George Washington University for the work that's gone into the preparation of this resource. We would have collectively spent a significant amount of time in being able to get to this point. So we're all really cheering over here at the fact that it has been done and that it has been well received. And we want to make sure that, again, if you have any additional questions, if there's any more information that you require, we will be sharing the contact information for the team who would have worked on this particular document. So you have the opportunity to reach out, ask your questions. At the end of this presentation, all attendees will receive a copy of this, a recording of this, so that you can look back at it. You can share with anyone who potentially should have been here, but did not have the opportunity to join us this morning. So once again, thank you to everyone who's here, to everyone who stayed, and to all the interest that's been showed. And we hope to be able to engage with you soon in the near future. So thank you.